G'day and welcome to Forgotten Tasmania. I'm John Stevenson. This episode is all about feedback, in particularly your feedback. Because yes, my fantastic audience have been really cool. They've sent in both information about where I've got things wrong, and they've shown me where the correct facts can be found. And I've also had photos and things sent in. It's just been amazing, the response. So, thank you so much. And I thought today we'd have a look at some of those photos and have a listen to some of your feedback. So first up, I've talked about Hobart's water system and how important water was to the establishment of Hobart Town back in the early 1800s. The Risdon Cove settlement failed principally because they didn't have running water, and the sister city, or the mirror city at Yorktown on the Tamar River, failed for the same sort of reasons. There just wasn't a constant supply of fresh water, so it was super important. And I talked about how I found out there was Hobart's first water system involved taking water from the Hobart Town rivulet and pumping it up to Anglesea Barracks, and there was a reservoir at Anglesea Barracks, and then from there it went as a gravity feed system down into Hobart through pipes reticulated water system. Yeah, and I've heard about this reservoir at Anglesea Barracks, but had no idea where it was. And I worked there for 9 years and I never found it. Didn't need to go looking for it, to be honest, but never found it. And anyway, they did some demolition work there in preparation for constructing of a new building. And as they demolished an old building that was built sort of in the Second World War era, they discovered that there was some ruins underneath. So they got in a full archaeological team and did a proper dig. And Kate from Anglesea Barracks sent in some photos so we can see what they found. And more than that, she's also sent her summary of the archaeological report. So I can read you that as well. The report says, "There has always been mention in various sources of a reservoir at the top of the hill near to the tap room. The book Barrack Hill mentions it, and it's referenced in some other documents and maps. But I'd always wondered why they would go to the effort of constructing the tank at the top of a hill so high above the water source." And then the report says officially what they found is a 2-roomed subsurface brick structure measuring 7 by 5.5 and 2.5 metres deep, so approximately 50,000 litres. While the top had been caved in at some point, it had an arched brick roof. The arch springers were still in place on the top of the walls. The floor was also brick lined. The roof was probably caved in when it was backfilled in the early 20th century, and it had been used as a rubbish pit for some time around that era as well, probably around 1909 when the old barracks block was demolished. It was hewn out of the bedrock, which stretched nearly to the top of the walls, then packed with clay around the outside between the rock and the brick. The inside was sealed with a lime render. It looks like there was possibly an overflow at the back, as there is a brick channel running down towards the Sandy Bay side. Other than that, the damage from later construction and the fact that some of it wasn't accessible meant we couldn't get a clear idea of the rest of the plumbing infrastructure. The bricks were all handmade sandstock, a vast number of which had broad arrow stamps of various types. That's amazing. Thanks, Kate, for sending these photos and sending that information. That was really incredible. I really like it when something that's been a bit mythical, and we haven't seen, and I talk about it in an episode, and then later on it turns up in real life. So that was a really cool thing. Thank you. Next up, Mary sent in some amazing pictures of Norfolk Island. Mary contacted me on Facebook, and then we've been emailing backwards and forwards. And it turns out that she's actually a historian author, and she's written several books, including one called Forgotten Tasmanians, which I call my show Forgotten Tasmania. I had no idea about her book, which predates it. So it was like a really happy coincidence, and we're both pretty blown away by that fact. Mary's an incredible person, and the moment that this pandemic finishes and lockdown eases and I can get out and get a camera in there, I'd love to interview Mary, and she's said that she'd like to do that as well. So I'm sure there'll be heaps of really amazing stories come out of that. Mary's descended from people that came out from Norfolk Island, and I'm presuming they settled at Sandy Bay, as many of the Norfolk Islanders did, although we know they also settled at New Norfolk and Clarence Plains and all over the state. So it'll be interesting to see where, Mary's family line there settled and who they were. I think they were the Billette family, and I've heard that name before, so that will be really interesting to find out, her story and get that there. And then we found another amazing coincidence that Mary's also related to a Mr. Dodds, who is the man on the bike in the famous BD Studio photo from about 1916 of Elizabeth Street with the man riding a bike up the thing. And I've had a few people that have said, they thought that might have been one of their relations or whatever, but we got out Mary's photographs of the Dodds family, and had a look, and yeah, definitely this is Mr. Dodds. So yeah, it was another amazing story. Yeah, so I can't wait to find out some of the stuff Mary has to say, get some interviews of her, and include that in a future episode. You may recall I did an episode on Tasmanian Firsts, which was written by Reg Watson, historian and military expert, and Reg had uncovered, along with former Governor Sir Guy Green, I believe it was, they discovered all these amazing things that were, happened first in Tasmania, from the humidity crib to the black box flight recorder and many, many more, plus our efforts in various military conflicts around the world, the number of Victoria Cross medals that Tasmania has, Tasmanians have been awarded, and compare that to our percentage of population, and the old expression is we bat well above our average. So that was an amazing episode, and I found out heaps, and the only shame there was that I had to cut out about 80% of Reg's material in his paper, because I just can't fit that in a video that I can make. I can only make fairly short videos at this stage, and in about, I think that was about half an hour, that one, so it was on the long side for me, and I covered barely 20% of the paper. Anyway, I got someone contact me on Facebook, and they sent in this amazing tea towel that you can see behind me. And it has all of the Tasmanian, well, not all of it, has a number of the Tasmanian Firsts listed, and it was like a promotional item. And so thank you so much for sending that. I absolutely love the tea towel. It really is good, and it's just reinforces that message that we are the little island that not only can do, we actually do. So that's pretty amazing stuff. Anytime you're feeling low, or you're feeling like Tasmania is like the back end of the world or a remote part or whatever, just have a read of some of those things in Reg's paper, or on the tea towel, and you'll definitely get a pick me up out of that one. My trophy shelf, which is currently partially covered by the wonderful tea towel, and that's because it's starting to empty out. I've the box of truffles, shall we say, and a couple of bottles of wine and a few other, very generous gifts that have been sent in. They're empty bottles and empty boxes and things now, but I really enjoyed them, and thank you so much for that. It's and good stuff. And I've got some cards, and of course my collection of pens and that. Again, once we allowed to meet in groups, I'll certainly be speaking at places like Probus and U3A and School for Seniors, etc. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm putting in some tentative bookings at the moment, so hopefully they all come off. But thank you everyone who sent things in. That was just that is just so cool of you. Thank you so much. And a special thank you to those people that support me on Patreon and actually put up some money that helps restore the BD collection. That's just a wonderful vote of confidence from you, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart for that. It really is cool. And thank you too to all the people that sent in information about their connection to some of these photographs and some of the stories that I've told. I've had people write in and contact me and say, that's my relative had that pub that you talked about, or this factory, or they worked here, or they were sent there, and we've had all sorts of people that are descended from our first Tasmanians, people that are descended from convicts and free settlers, and people that came along a little more later as well. So it's it's just fantastic to hear all those stories. I don't possibly have time to tell them all, I'm afraid, but that they're really good, and they help flesh out my understanding of the stories that I'm telling and how they link our community together. So yeah, thanks for your information, and it's really fantastic to hear from you. And it's just really good to get some feedback about making these things. As I said, I make these for me. I make them because I want to find out the stories. When I started, I might have had amazing dreams of being a YouTuber and getting paid, millions of dollars to do this. But once reality sets in, this is a passion for me. I've got all this collection of negatives, I've got all these photos, and I want to find out the stories behind them, reunite the history with the photos. And it's just what I'm enjoying doing at the moment. And so I make these videos because I know I like documentaries, and we all know that I watch way too many documentaries. Once I got into this collection, I really wanted to make documentaries about that, and I'm very slowly learning. And it's kind of it's an interesting experience, let me tell you, learning in public, so to speak. I might look back at my very first videos and I go, ooh, okay, that definitely could have been better. And then you look at ones a little bit later on and go, oh, okay, yes, you obviously learned from that mistake, and I think so far they've been improving every time, which is, that's the goal, that's what we want. And maybe one day they'll be good enough that someone like SBS or History Channel or the likes will pick up the series. But at the moment I'm doing it for me, and it's just so cool that that other people can connect with that and get some enjoyment out of it as well. So thank you so much. I will make heaps more episodes. There may be little breaks in the schedule because I think I've learned the lesson that you need to be ready to release the video, not just the fact that Friday comes around and it's time to release a new video. So I'm going to sort of get over that pressure that I put on myself, because I don't have anyone writing in saying, we want another video on Friday, and that's all in my head, and I have to overcome that. Now I'll spend a bit more time on them and get them right, and really get into the stories and things. So there'll be hopefully a better quality, always improving, and yeah, can't wait. Catch you in the next one. Cheers.